There's something inherently unnatural about mirrors. Even as a child, I felt it. That moment of stillness when the world on the other side of the glass felt just a little too quiet. Like it was waiting, watching. A reflection. Yes, but not always yours. We rely on mirrors to show us what's real, but what if they didn't? What if a mirror showed you not just a reflection, but a possibility, a reality just out of reach, where something is almost you, but not quite? This story isn't about any mirror, it's about the mirror, and how I came to question not only my sanity, but the very nature of the world we live in. It started 2 years ago when I wandered into a peculiar antique shop in a forgotten part of town. I was traveling for work, some mind-numbing conference, in Providence, and had a few hours to kill. Rain had started falling in cold, spitting sheets. I ducked into the shop on a whim, more to get dry than out of genuine interest. The place was dimly lit, cluttered, and smelled of dust and old wood. Shelves overflowed with oddities. Brass instruments, cracked porcelain dolls, faded maps with ink that looked like it had been drawn with blood. But at the back, partly covered in a tattered velvet cloth, stood a mirror. It was tall, nearly 7 feet, with an elaborate frame carved with curling vines and symbols I didn't recognize. It wasn't ornate in a decorative way, it was insistent, like it demanded to be seen. The glass wasn't perfectly smooth. Something about it rippled faintly in the low light. I could feel it watching me before I even uncovered it fully. The owner, a man whose name I never got, gaunt and dressed in a threadbare suit that looked older than the building, appeared beside me silently. I remember his voice was low and cracked, like leaves being crushed underfoot. "It doesn't like to be left alone for too long," he said. I laughed nervously and asked what he meant. He smiled, but not with his eyes. "If you listen long enough, you'll see. It remembers. It shows what you forget." I should have left then. I didn't. Instead, I bought the damn thing. It didn't take long for the strange occurrences to start. The mirror sat in the hallway of my apartment, leaning against the wall like it had always been there. I live alone, and I don't scare easy. I'd written off the shopkeeper's cryptic words as just salesmanship. But that changed on the 3rd night. I passed the mirror on my way to bed. In the dim light of the hallway lamp, I saw my reflection blink. Only, I hadn't. I froze. Blinked, deliberately. My reflection followed just a second off, enough to make my stomach drop. It happened again the next night. This time, I turned my head, but in the mirror, I didn't. The reflection just stared back at me, a half-second late. I stood in front of it for hours, testing movements, facial expressions, even vocal sounds. Sometimes it matched me perfectly. Sometimes it lagged. Worse still, sometimes it didn't match at all. I started researching, looking for others who'd experienced something similar. It was hard to separate fiction from fact, but I found them. A forum thread on a defunct website. An old blog post from 2009. A grainy YouTube video uploaded by a woman whispering in a dark room, warning others never to turn their backs on the mirror with the carved vine frame. Each account shared one common trait. The reflection seemed aware, conscious. A second self glimpsed in a glass pane, watching, mimicking, sometimes failing to do even that. One post caught my attention. It claimed the mirror didn't just reflect, it revealed. The writer said they'd seen a different room in the reflection, a space that didn't exist in their home. They saw people that weren't there, heard whispers that came from nowhere. They believed the mirror was a window into a parallel world. I wanted to dismiss it. I tried to, but deep down, I felt the truth in it. After all, I'd seen things, too. A shadow in the background that wasn't behind me. A flicker of movement that disappeared when I turned. Once, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror with a long, bleeding gash down my face. Something that hadn't happened. Not yet, anyway. I began to spiral, questioning what was real. I sought a scientific explanation. I talked to an optics professor I knew from college. I asked about delayed reflections, imperfections in glass, light warping. He shrugged it off. A mirror reflects photons. There's no mechanism for delay unless you're dealing with external interference. Electromagnetic distortion, maybe. But in your apartment? No way. He offered to examine the mirror. I declined. Part of me didn't want to know. Another part was afraid that the mirror wouldn't show him what it showed me, because by then, I wasn't the only one seeing things. A friend stayed over one night. Ben, someone who didn't believe in anything remotely supernatural. The next morning, he looked shaken, pale. He asked if I'd been standing in the hallway during the night whispering. I hadn't. He left early and never came back. With science failing me, I turned to the strange, the occult. I found books, fringe stuff, mostly. But the deeper I dug, the more I stumbled across consistent themes. In many cultures, mirrors have long been seen as portals, gateways between worlds. In Japanese folklore, they're used to trap spirits. In Romanian superstition, they must be covered after a death to prevent the soul from being taken. The idea that a mirror can hold or reveal something other is ancient and pervasive. There were theories about mirror entities, beings that exist in parallel dimensions and observe us through reflective surfaces. Some even claimed these entities could switch places with us if certain conditions were met. I dismissed most of it as myth, but it planted a seed I couldn't ignore. I began recording the mirror, setting up cameras overnight. At first, I caught nothing. Then one night the video showed something that stopped my heart. For 7 seconds around 3:13 a.m., my reflection wasn't mine. It was something else. It stood where I should have been, in clothes I didn't own, with eyes that didn't blink. Its mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Then it was gone, and the reflection returned to normal. The next night, I stayed awake and watched. It happened with my own eyes. It smiled at me. I screamed. I ran. I didn't sleep for days, but I couldn't get rid of the mirror. It was like it didn't want to be gone. Every time I tried to move it, I'd get nauseous. I'd hallucinate things. See spiders crawling out of the glass, hear voices calling my name. One time, I blacked out completely and woke up sitting in front of the mirror with blood under my nails. I called a paranormal expert, an old woman named Mary Ann who claimed to be a mirror medium. She entered the apartment and immediately turned pale. She wouldn't go near it, said it was too thin, that it wasn't a mirror anymore. It's a gate now, she said, trembling, and something's trying to come through. I asked what it wanted. She only whispered one word. You. I needed a break from the paranormal theories. I was sleeping less, eating even less than that, and my grasp on reality was starting to slip. I'd see reflections where there weren't any, car windows, dark puddles, even someone else's sunglasses. And for a fleeting second, I'd catch a glimpse of the other me again, always a little too still, a little too eager to be seen. So I tried a different approach. Psychology. If this mirror was a portal, fine. But if it was just a mind trick, then maybe I could understand it, control it, disarm it. I reached out to a neuropsychologist I knew from undergrad, Dr. Lena Moore. She specialized in perception, particularly how the brain interprets visual input. She was skeptical of my experiences, but open-minded enough to meet in person. She didn't want to see the mirror. That's important to note. Instead, she invited me to her office and asked me to describe what I'd experienced in detail. I laid it all out. The lagging reflections, the hallucinations, the other me that had started showing up more frequently in reflective surfaces beyond the mirror. She nodded through it all, then explained. Your brain relies heavily on visual continuity, she said. If something disrupts that, trauma, stress, lack of sleep, it can lead to visual misinterpretations. It's called pareidolia when we see familiar patterns, especially faces, in random data. But this sounds closer to a dissociative hallucination, potentially a reflection of suppressed stress or trauma. I asked her about mirror illusions, how easily the brain can be tricked. "Very," she replied. "There are classic experiments, the mirror box illusion used in phantom limb therapy, the Caputo effect, where people stare at their reflections in dim lighting and see monstrous distortions within minutes. It's the brain trying to make sense of ambiguous input. It fills in the blanks. Could it be that simple? I wanted it to be. I needed it to be. A trick of the mind, no more sinister than a dream. But that same night, back home, I tried to recreate the Caputo effect. I turned off the lights, left just a candle burning behind me, and stared into the mirror. I kept my eyes fixed. I waited for the distortions. They came. At first, subtle warping. Then my mouth stretched wider than it should. My eyes darkened, bled into the shadows around them. My skin grew gray, then thin, almost translucent. But then it blinked. Not me. It blinked. It raised a hand and pressed it to the other side of the glass. I felt cold on my cheek, as though something touched my side. I backed away, breath caught in my throat. I turned on all the lights and the mirror was as it had been. Innocent. Still. The science made sense in theory, but I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't dreaming. Something in the mirror wasn't me, and it was getting bolder. I've since spoken to others who encountered the mirror. The accounts were eerily consistent. Delayed reflections, whispers, changes in the background, coastal cliffs, unfamiliar skies, storm-lashed islands that didn't exist. Yes, islands. That was the twist I never expected. I received an email 3 months ago from a woman in New Zealand. She said she'd seen a video I posted, one I uploaded privately and anonymously to a horror community, and recognized the mirror. Her grandfather had owned it briefly before it was sold, and he'd told her something before he died, that through it he'd seen an island, not on any map. He believed the mirror was a doorway to it, a place that only existed in glimpses. It rang a distant bell. Back when I first moved the mirror into my apartment, I remember having dreams. Ones I dismissed as anxiety. But they weren't just dreams. They were recurring. In them, I stood on a craggy cliffside, black sea churning far below, stars swirling overhead in impossible constellations. There was always a building behind me, half ruined with something ancient carved into the stone. And in front of me, through a stone arch, a mirror freestanding facing the sea. Always that mirror, and in those dreams I felt at home. I did some digging, found whispers in obscure maritime logs and colonial records of a ghost island in the Pacific, seen in the 1800s by sailors but never confirmed. A place they called Veritas, or Truth. Others called it Sable Isle, or simply the Black Island. It appeared and disappeared, always near storm fronts, always reported as being watched. Then I found it, Sandy Island, a real place that once appeared on maps near New Caledonia. First charted in the 19th century, it was believed to be a genuine landmass, but when modern expeditions searched for it, they found nothing. It had vanished. Except, on some satellite images, you can still see a faint outline, like a memory burned into the planet. That's when it clicked. What if the mirror didn't just show you an alternate self, but another place entirely? A place you could only reach when your perception slipped far enough? I began seeing flashes of it in the mirror. A shoreline, crashing waves. The mirror sometimes felt wet when I touched it. My dreams grew more vivid. I could hear gulls. I could taste salt on the air. And then, it happened. One night, the mirror wasn't reflecting my apartment at all. It showed a beach, sand black as obsidian, the ruins of a lighthouse, sky churning, with red stars. I could feel wind on my face that didn't exist in the room. The air smelled like brine. I reached out, and my hand passed through, just for a second. It was real, and then it snapped back, like a rubber band stretched too far. My apartment reappeared. My nose bled. My vision doubled for hours afterward. But I know what I saw. I know what's waiting on the other side. A place lost to time. A place of truth, or lies, or both. The disappearing island that mirrors reality, just as the mirror shows our face, warped, delayed, always watching. So here I am. I've tried to destroy the mirror. Fire didn't touch it. Acid only darkened the edges. I've tried to sell it, give it away. It always comes back. It wants something. Maybe it wants me to go through, to join the version of myself who already has. Because sometimes, when I look into the mirror now, I don't see me anymore. I see him, standing on that beach, looking back through the glass, smiling, waiting. So what is the truth? Is the mirror a portal to a parallel dimension? A psychological illusion born of stress and sleepless nights? A trick of optics? Or something far older and stranger? An artifact from a place that was, or almost was, real? I can't tell you for sure. All I can do is show you what I've seen, share the story, and leave the rest up to you. If you ever come across a mirror you don't remember buying, one with carvings like vines, one that seems just a little too reflective, don't look too long, and if you see something blink when you didn't, run. Because some reflections aren't meant to be seen. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some islands were never meant to be found.